Members of Parliament debate the Airport Authority Amendment Bill. Taxicab union members take to the streets once again, and the Governor General refutes social media reports. Good evening, everyone. I'm Leah Cooper with your JCN News for this Wednesday, March 24th. In news from the House of Assembly, parliamentarians debating the Airport Authority Amendment Bill 2021. Leading off debate was Tourism and Aviation Minister Dionisio de Aguilar in explaining the purpose of the bill, which is to authorize the acquisition of the Grand Bahama International Airport. He revealed that the government is set to purchase the same for $1. The GBIA, according to the minister, is probably the last substantial airport in the country that is not owned by the government, and says that he and the minister-led administration is of the view that the gateway in Grand Bahama should be owned by the government.
Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian taxpayer, and especially the taxpayers in Grand Bahama, want to know the amount that their government has agreed to pay for that airport. Well, Mr. Speaker, the purchase price is $1. Yes, Mr. Speaker, $1. Plus, there's always a plus the assumption of a portion of staff-related costs, which should not exceed $1 million. So, Mr. Speaker, the Airport Authority is purchasing about 2,500 acres of land, an 11,000-foot-long runway that was recently resurfaced, taxiways, ramps, etc., all for under $1 million.
The aviation minister says that when the offer to purchase the airport was made, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Dr. Hubert Minnis, directed the purchase of the 2,500 acres of land. According to the minister, GBIA is currently 100% owned by the Freeport Harbor Company, which is 100% owned by Hutchinson Port Holdings. Minister de Aguilar, further in making his contributions, contends that over the past 2 decades, the airport has not been operated in the best interests of Grand Bahamians. In the last few years, the airport has been hard hit by several hurricanes, costing millions of dollars in damage. The most devastating hurricane, Dorian, in September of 2019. He adds that purchasing is the easy part, and once the airport is purchased, the real challenging work will begin.
It is no secret that redesigning and rebuilding a new state-of-the-art airport in Freeport that is resilient against Hurricane Dorian-type hurricanes will cost tens of millions of dollars. I've gone on record through the papers last night to say that it will probably be in the region of $40 to $50 million.
The minister says the way forward for the rebuilding of the Grand Bahama International Airport will be through public-private partnership, as was done with the Lynden Pinling International Airport.
Pending the redevelopment of the Grand Bahama International Airport, the government is committed to spend $1.5 million to repair further some of the Hurricane Dorian devastation at the airport. Funds are earmarked to repair the air traffic control building and replace the elevator system in the building and the air traffic control tower, create office space in the old domestic terminal, and effect repairs to the current cargo building. The government will also explore what is necessary to reopen the U.S. pre-clearance facilities at the Grand Bahama International Airport, although indications are that an increase in traffic between the island of Grand Bahama and the United States is a required first step to restarting this arrangement.
Now, as for those currently employed at the GBIA by Hutchinson, the aviation minister says when the transfer is completed to the Airport Authority, those employees' relationship with Hutchinson will be severed with the usual severance arrangement. He adds that prior to the transition, the Airport Authority will identify and engage those employees that are needed and wish to transition over to the new ownership so that there is no disruption in services or business while the transition is taking place. Meantime, Minister of Agriculture and Marine Resources Michael Pintard seconding the Airport Authority Amendment Bill 2021, saying that as the government, they have an obligation to Grand Bahama as they are in a challenging position with a fragile economy. The purpose of this bill is for the purchase of the Grand Bahama Airport. During his contribution to the debate, Minister Pintard contends that the lack of a world-class airport in Grand Bahama sends the wrong message to local and international investors. He says that is absolutely non-negotiable, that the government can leave the airport as it is now.
A part of the frustration of the Bahamian population is they have not often seen sufficient urgency in governments. And people are fed up. Unfortunately, we are in the chair against the backdrop of Dorian and in the midst of a pandemic and some previous decisions that could have been made better. And so we are now getting the brunt of it. So we are manning up and for others of different gender, women enough to face these criticisms. The future success of Grand Bahama in general and Freeport in particular relies in large measure on the confidence of both international and national stakeholders that central and municipal government, and both of us, are prepared to invest what is necessary in stabilizing the economy in Grand Bahama.
Minister Pintard contends that the proposition of the new airport in Grand Bahama will send the message to residents, investors, and other stakeholders that the government is at a minimum optimistic about the future of the island and is prepared to take the steps to facilitate its development. Minister of Financial Services, Trade and Industry and Immigration telling reporters this morning that he has serious concerns about the increase in the insertion of non-complete clauses into the employment of contracts for hotel and tourism management executives.
I spoke with the Minister of Labor. The Director of Labor is a strange thing in a contract of a non-compete clause. How do you have a non-compete clause in the hotel industry where a very small jurisdiction, think about this, very small jurisdiction, which represents more than almost 50% of your gross domestic product and is responsible for employing about 50% of the persons in the Bahamas. In the context of COVID-19, where persons are being furloughed for almost a year, an opportunity comes up and you said you can't take that opportunity because you have a non-compete clause. Well, I've asked those individuals to take legal counsel. I can't give them legal advice, but I said it made absolutely no sense.
A non-complete clause in some cases presents workers with a special skill set, senior resort management with access to sensitive information from suddenly leaving their employer and going to work for a rival company. They are instead forced to take a break of 1 or 2 before they can do so. Typically, this clause is to prevent a worker from taking trade secrets, sensitive information, or clients to another employer. However, Minister Johnson contends that the non-complete clause is unfair to workers who were terminated or made redundant due to circumstances that were not their fault, such as COVID-19 causing a hotel property to close down. And in our national COVID-19 update, health officials confirming 18 cases of the virus in country for Tuesday, March 23rd. 10 cases here in the capital, 4 on Grand Bahama, 3 on Abaco, and 1 case on Eleuthera. 13 of those new cases are males and 5 are females. These numbers push the national total to 8,953. 932 of them are active, 31 of them in hospital, with 1 in the intensive care unit, with 22 recoveries yesterday. Recovered cases tally at 7,779. Health officials noting that 258 tests were completed, 239 negative results, with 1 being a repeat test. The death toll remains at 188, with 15 deaths under investigation. To date, 73,979 tests have been completed. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.